Oh, sorry for the chaotic start. Let's. Okay. Sorry if I'm a little nervous. Ladies and gentle creatures, welcome. You have reached the halls of the Lady Baphomet Society, and we are proud to present for you today the beasts who came before us. A look into the creatures and beasts from the halls and tales of ancient Greece. Before we begin, I would like to give a content warning. We are talking about ancient Greece. Any time that you talk about ancient Greece, just about every content warning you can imagine is implied here. Now, because obviously we're keeping things more light here, I will not be going into detail on anything, obviously, but mentions of things may still occur. Things such as violence, mentions of misogyny, misogynistic violence, assault, death, things like that. But not that I will go into detail, but to make everyone aware, we are dealing with the ancient Greeks, God help us. So, without further ado, a quick introduction. So, who are we? Your humble narrators, your humble hosts. We are the Lady Baphomet Society. We are a 25-year-old traumagenic system of entirely non-male non-humans. We are diagnosed with chronic yapping disease. We have ADHD. Quite literally said in our assessment that we talk too much. So, this will be a bit of a long-winded panel. Strap in, folks, we've got an hour. So yes, we are a system of queens, thieves, thespians, freaks, creatures of all kinds, and we're certified nerds, weirdos, and vaguely off-putting. We're not at all a hyena in real life. That would be crazy, because everybody knows that hyenas don't have opposable thumbs. What? That'd be nuts. That'd be crazy. We have been studying Greek mythology since age 6. So my credentials are I have autism. And also that I took a lot of ancient art history classes when I was in college. So, you know, that I will say, obviously, I'm not a historian. I don't have a degree. I just have a special interest. So we are pretty new to the ultrahuman community. We are not new to being non-human. We've known that since we were very young. But those of you who saw us at OtherCon, that was our first foray into the community. So this is our first official panel we're ever hosting at a ultrahuman con. Woo! The other one was one of the like improv panels. So this is a first for us to be considered an official panel. So yippee! And I don't know what else to put here. We're just so delighted that people want to hear us talk about this. I'm very excited to give this presentation, and I would like to add one more disclaimer. Ancient Greek myths vary as much as there are people to tell them. So the version that I may know and I may talk about may be different than the version that you know and you talk about, and that's okay. Ancient Greek myths were not always written down. They varied wildly per geographical region, per the class or status of the people telling them. So it all varies very wildly. And we'll talk about storytelling later on in the panel. But I just wanted to say, just because you don't know this version of the myth doesn't make either of us wrong. When it comes to myths, it's actually pretty easy to be right. So, we already covered the content warnings. I forgot that we put a slide in here. So just one more. Oh, also, there will be visual depictions that include artistic nudity. Nobody wanted to draw nobody wanted to create art in ancient Greece of people wearing clothes, which, like, I get it. So, just one more reminder that these are the content warnings for things that may come up when we were talking about Greek mythology. And without further ado, we are going to be talking about the children of Echidna today. Because there are so many Greek monsters, if I were to do all of them, we would be here literally all con. So, I decided to focus on Echidna and her children. So that's who we will be covering today. So, who is Echidna? She was a half goddess, half snake that predates the Olympians, so she's likely a Titan. It's never really very clear. She is the mate of Typhon, who's a whole other kettle of fish that I don't get into in this presentation because he's his own thing. And she gave birth to some of the most famous creatures in Greek mythology that we will be talking about today. She was noted to live in a hidden cave called Arima, and is never actually noted to have died in any like major myths. So there is a very strong possibility, if you believe in this sort of thing, that she's still around today. There are actually no ancient depictions of her that survived to the modern day. We do not know what the Greeks thought she looked like, other than she was half woman, half snake. So this statue is like an approximation made by a non ancient Greek artist. I don't know exactly what time period this sculpture was made under, but it's not that old. It's not from ancient Greece. We don't know what the ancient Greeks thought she looked like, unfortunately. But in a way, she could be considered the kind of mother to a lot of non-humans, to altered humans, to non-humanity. She gave birth to, in ancient Greek culture, the first things that were not gods and not people. So those of us who are not gods and not people, we can, in the beliefs of ancient Greece, trace our roots back to Echidna. And so this presentation will be about her children. And I tried to go in as close to alphabetical order as possible. So we will start with Cerberus or Cerberus. The pronunciation can vary slightly. The multi-headed hound who guarded the gates of the underworld. I think this is the one most people will recognize. He was the companion to the god Hades and other members of the House of Hades, such as Persephone, Thanatos, and other such entities around death. So he actually was not referenced very often in ancient Greek stories. We really only see him during the 12 Labors of Heracles. Heracles comes up a lot in this, by the way. He really had some beef, I guess, with the children of Echidna. You will see that man around a lot. But Cerberus is very often depicted in modern media, such as what I can think of off the top of my head, the game Hades. Has him in there. A lot of depictions forget to give him his little snake tail, though. He's got a little snake tail. Most of the children of Echidna have a snake going on somewhere. Um, he was known to actually be very kind, loyal, and affectionate to the members of the House of Hades, and then really didn't like anybody else. So, good dog, best friend. Sorry to jump scare those of you who go to Homestuck. Um, he was a wonderful companion. I do believe there are some statues of Hades actually that may depict him, but only with one head. I think there were some instances of which the stories gave him one head instead of three. It's a little, like I said, it varies. The Chimera. She was typically portrayed as a lion with a goat's head protruding from her back and a snake tail. Though some depictions also did give her dragon wings, which is like sick as shit. She was originally referred to as a female. There was one chimera. As you can see, she's depicted as a nursing lion. She was possibly inspired by Sekhmet, the Egyptian goddess who is depicted as a lioness or with the head of a lion. She's actually most notable for her impact on how we create modern beasts and monsters. The concept of a chimera being a creature made up of more than one creature. It is also, I believe, a term used within the intersex community. I am not intersex, so I can't super speak on that, but I have heard that that is a term used for a certain kind of being falling on the intersex spectrum. Um, her original myth is actually, I wasn't able to actually find much. She wasn't necessarily, the ancient Greeks just liked to make guys and then go look at my guy, and then that was it. Which, like, real, I make OCs all the time. Um, and she was sometimes portrayed with the goat and lion parts reversed. So she'd have the head and body of a goat, and then the head of a lion sticking out of her back, but be mostly goat. It could go either way. Also, yes, I was looking in the chat. Hyperandrogenic chimera. Okay, cool, awesome. Um, yeah, I just knew that that was a term that I'd heard used before. I didn't really know what the specificities were. Then we have the Cochlean dragon. This is some of my favorite art from the entire presentation because why is Jason just hanging out there? The Cochlean dragon was the dragon who guarded the Golden Fleece. If you have ever known the story of Jason and the Argonauts, this is what they were going to get. It never slept, rested, or lowered its vigilance. And it is said to have a crest and 3 tongues. The only way that they were able to get the Golden Fleece was because the witch Medea, who I could make an entire presentation on, was put it to sleep using magic so that Jason could retrieve the Golden Fleece. And later on, there are several depictions of the dragon pulling Medea's chariot. Also, I love that art of Jason just kind of hanging out and Athena coming to save him. Because that doesn't happen in the story, as far as I'm aware, at least like the most common retellings. This artist was just like, wouldn't it be funny if Athena had to show up and save his ass? Then we have the Gorgons, and oh, fellas. This is where I get to talk for a bit. Um, so strap in. This will be one of the yap sections. Um, there were 3 notable Gorgons. Gorgons were just more so of a kind of monster that the Greeks would put on things, but only 3 of them, as far as I'm aware, in original Hellenistic Greek writings and stories. 3 of them were given names, and they were 3 sisters: Sethino, Uriel, and Medusa. They were considered minor river deities and associated with rivers or water. I can't remember. It varies if it's rivers or oceans. I said rivers for the sake of keeping things consistent, but it also very well could be oceans. And only Medusa was mortal, but unlike what would happen with a lot of later myths, Medusa was never a human. In ancient Hellenistic writing, she was just a Gorgon that was born mortal. There was no greater moral lesson to it. She was not even particularly notable among ancient Greeks, other than she was a Gorgon that could be killed. Gorgons were a species rather than something, they were born rather than created by the gods. Um, so that would come later on. Trying to get my thoughts in order. My brain goes a little crazy when I think about Medusa. So basically what happened to the myth of Medusa was to give a very brief rundown. Um, Original story, she's just a an entity killed by Perseus. There's nothing super notable about her myth. And then Ovid, who I have, and everybody who studies Greek mythology's got that one Greek philosopher that they have beef with. Mine is Ovid. Ovid got a hold of the myth, and since he really hated the gods, he decided to make the story that was written about um, Medusa having been a priestess of Athena who was assaulted by Poseidon and then punished by Athena for it because he hated the gods. And then the Romans kept that, and then the Renaissance period got their hands on it and romanticized. Well, the Romance period, not the Renaissance. Sorry. The Romance period got their hands on it and did what the Romance period did and romanticized it, which is actually where that phrase comes from, if I'm remembering my art history correctly. Where they made it so that it wasn't assault, it was that Poseidon and Medusa were lovers, and then Medusa got punished for it. But then, towards the more modern era, and I mean 1900s modern, Medusa became more of a symbol of feminism. There are actually, you can find on a lot of early suffragette, like dresses and stuff, they would have buttons and brooches with the head of Medusa, engraved on them, which is awesome. And now in towards the modern day, a depiction that I really like is that Medusa asked Athena to turn her into a monster so no man could look upon her again and live, which I really like. All of these are, it's whatever the story needs to reflect to the people at the time. So now Medusa tends to symbolize survivors and those of us who have, sorry if you can hear my cat. Um, but yeah, so the myth of Medusa is really interesting because it has evolved wildly throughout history. There's actually very few myths that have like had this much of like a cultural, like wildly varying like impact the way that Medusa does. The only two I can really think of is Pandora and the myth of Hades and Persephone. Those are the only things that have swung so wildly in every direction. Um Also, I will wave at her for you, my cat. Um so I'll talk a little bit about Hades and Persephone later. We'll get to that. But yeah, Medusa is a fantastic figure. I could do an entire presentation just on Medusa. But for the interest of time, I've already yapped for 5 minutes straight just about Medusa. I'm gonna move on, but I'm happy to answer questions about Medusa when we get to the Q&A section. Also, Zagreus, you're so valid. Also, Melenoway in our system says hi. Um, the Hydra of Lerna was the giant, many-headed serpent who was fought by Heracles. Its blood and breath were so poisonous, even the smell could kill you. Also, no one could agree on how many heads this fucker had. It varied from one to literally thousands. Because the thing about ancient Greek men was they didn't want to ever agree with each other and always wanted to be the right one, even down to how many heads the Hydra had, because God forbid any of them ever agree with each other and not be the quote unquote original right creator of the idea. But yes, the average Twitter user is incredibly real. Also, I will talk about that statue of Medusa, by the way, at the end. So the Hydra was defeated during Heracles, during his 12 labors, which if you cut off one head, it would cause two more to grow back. So he got around that by cauterizing each of the necks after it was cut off. And the Hydra likely inspired the basilisk. So no head. Ledon, the great serpent-like dragon who guarded the golden apples in the garden of Hesperides. Sorry, I know how to spell these names. I don't speak Greek or ancient Greek or Latin, so some of these names trip me up a little bit. I apologize. So, Lydon was also another one of Echidna's children that beefed with Heracles. Though he was seemingly loved by the nymphs who lived in the garden, so much so that when Heracles killed him, they were shown to weep over his body. In some versions of the myth, though, it is never slain, and the apples are actually taken by Atlas, the Titan who holds up the sky, to give to Heracles in response for his labors. Heracles actually held up the sky for Atlas in return for letting him go to his daughter's wedding and retrieve a golden apple for him. Heracles held up the sky, I want to say, for a full day, which is crazy, considering he was only a demigod. So that speaks to the strength of Heracles. Man did not fuck around. But Atlas, because he was a honorable Titan, he did come back. He took the sky back, and Heracles was able to continue on his journey. Ladon was also said to maybe have had multiple heads and speak in different voices. So, interesting little design element there. Then we have the Nemean lion, who's quite literally just a large golden lion. What was special about him is that his pelt could not be pierced by any mortal weapon. Swords, arrows, daggers, whatever. Couldn't phase the guy. And he had claws sharper than any sword. So he ran kind of amok until he was killed by Heracles during the 12 labors. Again, half the kids of Echidna were just straight up wiped out by this guy. His pelt would go on to symbolize strength and heroism. There are unfortunately no remaining full pieces of art depicting just the lion and not Heracles. Like, I just picked a random lion statue, I'm going to be honest. There's one extremely damaged, barely make outable mural of the Nemean lion that survived to the modern day, and that's it. There are no other depictions that do not also include him fighting Heracles. And some say that he was raised by Hera. There are actually a lot, because Hera is a fascinating goddess. She actually raised a lot of the people that we hear about in Greek mythology. She is like associated with motherhood, so she does actually end up fostering, and a lot of them end up being wards of Hera raised on Olympus, such as Thetis, the mother of Achilles, was the ward of Hera. She grew up under Hera's care, which is really interesting. I love Thetis. She's not in this presentation, but oh, I love her so much. Scylla! Oh, me. This is me. Scylla. For those of you who know Epic the Musical, she is. Or Hades. I love her in Hades too. She's so cute. Scylla was depicted as a giant woman, with eels for like tails and like a lower torso, and 3 dog heads coming out of her torso. Oh, thank you about the laugh. Thank you. And she was known for eating boats that came too close to her lair. And her lair was right across this little narrow passageway from the giant monster Charybdis, who was this giant monstrous whirlpool. And the ships had to really choose between sailing closer to the lair of Scylla or the lair of Charybdis, which one of the earliest known usage of the phrase, as we know, between a rock and a hard place, was between Scylla and Charybdis, which was a phrase used in ancient Greece. And she's most famously seen in the Odyssey when faced by Odysseus, in which she devours many of his crew members. 6 in most depictions. She is also notable for like never really having been defeated or fought or anything. To be fair, like what are you gonna do? You know? um, because like what are you gonna do? um, but she is a phenomenal monster. The ancient Greeks really did kind of go crazy with their monster designs. Like I will say, I don't know I don't know if it was Delphi water that they were on, but whatever it is that they were smoking or drinking, I'd like some of it because maybe it was the sulfur. I don't know, but they dreamed up some crazy creatures. Let me tell you, the Sphinx. I love you, Sphinx. The Sphinx was typically depicted with the head of a human, a woman in ancient Greece, a man in ancient Egypt, the body of a lion, and the wings of an eagle. The ancient Egyptian Sphinx, it was just the body of a lion. There were no wings. Um, Known to be guardians, especially of temples or of cities. They were merciless and fond of riddles. Most famous Sphinx is seen guarding the city of Thebes in the drama Oedipus Rex, the titular character having to solve a riddle to avoid being eaten. Now, the most commonly known riddle for the Sphinx, which is what walks on four legs in the morning, two legs during the day, and three legs at night, or there are two sisters. One gives birth to the other, and she, in turn, gives birth to the first. Who are the two sisters? And I'm going to give people a second to answer one or both of those riddles. And I want to see, especially the second one, because the second one's a lot less common. So I want to see if anybody gets this. I know most people know the first one. I'll just give it. I'll just give it just a second, just to see if anybody. Ding! Somebody got it. The people got it. The second one is night and day. The two sisters are night and day. So the Sphinx, in Greek mythology, what's interesting is that there's noted to be one Sphinx in a lot of them, and it's just the Sphinx within Oedipus Rex. There's not really mentions of her elsewhere, so it leads me to believe that there's only one. But sphinxes are depicted in temples to be guardians and such. So only one of them is ever mentioned in like a titular myth, though. See, I'm in the place where actually I love Disney's Heracles. I don't think it's at all accurate, but I love that movie. It bangs. And I'll talk about this later. So, why do we talk about this in the first place? And this is where I get to be very like storytelling is extremely important. So much of how we tell stories, the way we view certain types of creatures or animals or even people, and the intertwining between the human and inhuman in today's day and age is influenced by ancient Greek myths. Reclamation, so many of these stories were told by men, human men, from Athenian Greece. We deserve to be able to write our own stories. Only by knowing where we came from can we know where we are going. Especially when it comes to mythology. Mythology is something that is so unique because there is no right way to do it. And I know that preserving the historically accurate versions of myths is important for historical records. But the thing about myths is that they don't die. These are not dead stories. Stories are never done being written. They are never done being told. As long as there are tongues to speak them, there will be new ways of telling the story. That's why we see so many stories throughout history, throughout the world, that look so similar, is because myths and stories are meant to reflect and when I say human experience, I mean human asterisk. The the human asterisk experience. So it's all about what, because myths exist to explain what people need explained because they don't understand or because they need to believe in something. So, modern myths are just as important as ancient myths because it is about what we as a people's, what we as a society need. The stories reflect the beliefs and the needs of the people who are telling them. Myths are no different. Myths are constantly evolving, they vary wildly, and that's okay. It is about what is most important to the person speaking it. Like the myth of Medusa. It changed to reflect who was speaking because women in ancient Greece were not allowed to read or write. This is a very important thing that I need people to know. There were very few there were exceptions to this, but there were very few exceptions to this. Sappho being a notable one. But that's why she had to publish her poetry anonymously. Because she could, and a lot of that very famous phrase, which is throughout history, anonymous has been a woman. This is very true. A lot about what I talk about, like I've written some essays on my dream with, well, one I want to write more is about non-human feminism and looking at Greek mythology through that lens of being a trans non-human. Um, I think it's very important because a lot of these stories, there's a whole subsect of ancient Greek myths that were passed down from mother to daughter. They were never written. They were mostly about the goddesses. So much of Hera's, what actually women believed about Hera, we don't know because they weren't written down, right? What women thought of Medusa or Persephone or Demeter or the Sphinx or anything that actually reflected their experiences, we don't know because the men never asked the women for their stories. And also, it's a class thing. Heavy class divides in ancient Greece, especially Athenian Greece. Primarily, what I talk about is Athenian Greece. Um, it's a little bit more difficult to find concrete records about other things when it comes to this. Um, but that's why I think it's so important for us to tell these stories now because we do have voices. Those of us who are not cis men, those of us who are from poorer or lower income communities or families, those of us who are disabled, who are queer, who are non human, we have voices now. And that is why I implore people to speak. I implore people to write down their stories, to share them, to put them into the aether because they deserve to exist. Your story deserves to be preserved, deserves to be spoken. Speak. I beg of people to speak and share their stories. A very a very famous storyteller by the name of Brennan Lee Mulligan once asked, why do we tell stories? And my answer to that has always been, it is a form of love. I think as long as stories are told, that is what makes us quote unquote humans. I think that is what makes us alive. I think stories are the very backbone of our existence, of what allows us to say that we exist, that we are here, that we can speak, that we are no longer going to be ignored and sidelined in our own narrative. These narratives belong to us. We honor those who came before us who did not get to own their own narratives. We must speak it for them. They no longer have tongues with which to do it. We owe it not only to ourselves, but to those who came before us. And one day we will be the beasts of legend that are spoken about. I would rather they speak my own story than outsiders' versions of my myth. So, in whatever way, speak, tell stories. I implore you, for yourself and for those around you. Stories, especially in the world that we are living in today, stories have never been more important. We have never needed unity more than we do now. Be loud, write, speak, read. More than ever, we need those who will preserve. Those of us, even if you do not feel comfortable speaking, preserve the writings and speakings of those who do, especially those who have come before us. With how hard they are trying to erase everything that is not within their idea of what is good, it is more important now than ever to preserve, to archive, to continue to speak. We cannot let these stories be lost. Right. I implore people, speak and be heard. I run a Discord server that I'm trying to be more active in, focused around storytelling and writing. And if anybody would be interested in that, I can drop a link in advertisements later. But I implore people to write, to speak, to ask questions, to write down stories. Just do it. Like, tell stories. Do it. To be a storyteller is the greatest gift. I cannot implore you more. You deserve to be heard, and so do your stories. This is why we learn about the beasts that came before us, because they are teaching us what we should do now. Yes, print it out if you can. Upload it to hard drives if you can't. Like, just preserve it off the internet. So, thank you, dear viewer. Thank you for lending me your ear throughout this presentation. We are so deeply grateful. A small self little promo if you would like to follow along with our more in-depth writing, including various essays already published and upcoming, approaching Greek mythology through a feminist and non-human lens we published on our Dream With. And if you have any questions, I implore you now to direct them to panel questions. And thank you again for your support. With gratitude, the Baphomet Society. So now we open the floor for Q&A. Please direct any questions of panel questions, and we will do our best to get to everyone. This was old from HowlCon. I forgot to remove it. But this is being recorded. I imagine because it is an official panel, this will actually go up on YouTube. So also, 100 points to whoever can tell us what Katerothamos means. You will not find it by Googling it. I will reveal it later. But it is a Persephone. Yes. Okay. I think Hades and Persephone is such a fascinating myth because it just varies so wildly. Also, we know next to nothing about Persephone. Persephone's name is not a name, it is an epitaph. It means goddess of the underworld. Kor, or Kore, means maiden. We don't know what her actual name was. Her cult took it to the grave. They never wrote it down. They were extremely secretive. We don't know her actual name. Persephone is not a name. Also, she was way more metal than most media portrays her as. She was the goddess of iron, torture, blood, and death. She was metal as fuck. And people were scared of Persephone. They were more scared of Persephone than they were of Hades. She was known as Dread Persephone or Dread Lady Persephone. That is how she is. It's like Lord Hades and Dread Persephone. Like straight up, I mean, to be fair, a lot of ancient Greek men were terrified of women. Look at Eris, for example. But like, yeah, Persephone was the one that you were actually afraid of. When it came to ancient Greece, she was metal as fuck. Um, yeah, yes, that is it. When you're terrified of a thing, you do not speak its name. That's quite literally it. Same with goes with Eris, the goddess of chaos, who is our matron. Um, she didn't have any temples. You only left offerings out for her to get her to go away. um, so, so yeah, no, Persephone, metal as fuck. Yes, she was kidnapped by Hades. People who try to be like, no, she wasn't, that's a modern interpretation, which is fine. She was kidnapped by Hades. To be fair, in ancient Greece, it was a little bit more socially acceptable to kidnap your wife. Not giving a moral stance on that, just saying societally it was seen as a little more socially acceptable than it would be now. um, my favorite, personally, modern depiction of Hades and Persephone is Hades Town. Fantastic musical. I got to see it live. Cried incredibly hard. I don't usually cry. I love that musical. You ever want a fantastic musical? Hades Town. It's a semi-modern retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice. Fantastic, fantastic musical. I love that they depict Persephone and Hades as like an old couple. It's great. It's fantastic. I love them so much. Um, oh god, Orpheus and Eurydice, don't even get me started. Okay. Yours was your matron. That's a whole tangent, but I have been working with her since I was 15, so it's been about 10 years, and the fact that she hasn't left yet speaks to that pretty heavily. I've worked with other deities before that have not lasted that long, and also she has pretty much been like the child and just kind of was like me. And so she just kind of picked us up by the scruff of our neck and was like, "This one's mine," and then that's just kind of how that went. But she's Eris, and I don't think she does anything by the book. So I don't know. She whipped her fucking bra off and whipped her tits out in the middle of a fucking intuitive tarot reading we were doing one time, and I've never been so embarrassed. You can't take her anywhere. You ever work with Eris? You can't take her anywhere. Start connecting to deities by accident. Um, it is not for beginners. Do not do what I do as I say, not as I do. Deity work, not for beginners, not even a little bit. You should have years of practice before you even start. Very dangerous to open yourself up to entities outside of yourself. I was 15 and didn't know that. I got lucky. I made a shot in the dark and called out to Iris, and luckily she was the one that found me and not something else. So, and then she was like, Jesus Christ, child, do not do that again. So do as I say, not as I do. Uh, do not work with deities until you are well into your practice. It is very, 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 very risky to open yourself up to entities that are not you. It does not matter. You must be able to draw very firm boundaries. With deities, they are not people. They will not understand. Things like, I also work with Lady Morrigan. I'm going to use her as an example with this because she's a little bit more pushy. Um, she used to send me horrible nightmares when I wasn't doing the work I was supposed to be doing, and I had to put my foot down and say, "Hey, I'm not doing this anymore if you keep doing this." And then she stopped. But you have to know your own boundaries and know your own capacity before you work with um things. Enyo, I love Enyo. Okay, Enyo's so fascinating because people can't decide if she existed or not. For those who don't know, Enyo was the allegedly twin sister of Ares. Some people think she and Eris were the same goddess. I personally don't think so because Eris is actually more often than not the child of Nyx rather than Zeus and Hera, though there are some myths that refer to her as the child of Zeus and Hera. Enyo is a goddess of war. She's Ares' twin sister. I think she's awesome. Um, women in male dominated fields, in parentheses, war. Animated Animated Sinbad is one of my favorite movies of all time. Um, genuinely, I love that movie. started bouncing around. I like went off on a tangent and I looked and people had like four questions. Uh Animated Sinbad film is fantastic, specifically because of Iris. They had an entire animation team just dedicated to animating her hair. It's awesome. Iris is the best part of that movie. The rest of the movie, kind of mid. Iris, fantastic. So I genuinely love that movie. I've subjected my family to having to watch it many times. Um, yeah. So love the animated Sinbad movie. It's actually kind of mid, in my opinion, outside of Iris, but Iris is such a good performance that is punish you. Morrigan is an interesting case because she is the goddess. She's more so trying to push me, I think. I don't necessarily know if it was meant to be as quote unquote punishment, but she's like giving me burns before from her candle and stuff. Exit. She gets a little testy. It heavily depends. I'm not gonna obviously not gonna speak ill, but she's gotten a little bit better as I've gotten older and actually listen. I was just a little stubborn and we were having a bit of a stubborn off. Um, yeah, I don't necessarily think that she's tormenting me by any means, but it was like she told me to do shadow work, I didn't do it. She told me to do it again, I didn't do it. The third time she burnt my hand with her candle when I was pouring out some wax. But the burn healed the next day. Like straight up was gone. Like, so she I think she felt bad. But it was straight up me not doing what she knew I needed to be doing. So that's become less of an issue as I've gotten older. But again, if you don't know how to draw boundaries with your deities, they don't know what the limits of what you're willing to put up with. Um, Skirmish, terror, entanglement, military. Exactly, women in STEM. Um, yeah, shadow work might be hated. So real. Um, but yeah, we have outside of doing research for things in a more art history philosophy way, we are also pagan. We don't really consider ourselves any sort of denomination of pagan, just pagan. Culturally, we are Scots Irish American, so we practice Celtic paganism or Celtic stuff more so as a cultural thing, as a way of reconnecting to that rather than necessarily a religious thing. We have a complicated relationship with spirituality, but um, yeah, Iris, I would say, has been the best deity to work with. She's cannot recommend if you are somebody who's ready to do deity work. Cannot recommend working with Iris enough. Your life will never be boring. I'll tell you that. Um, yeah, well, I need to learn. I'm trying to learn Gaelic, both Gaelic and Gaelic. So hard to learn. Um, Irish Gaelic is really hard to learn. Yeah, no, Loki, it's very similar. Iris and Loki are both kind of trickster entities. Iris actually has her own religion called Discordianism. Mimetic trigger warning, by the way, if you look into Discordianism, it's all absurd and like psycho reality. It was written by a bunch of people on shrooms in the 70s. Heavily on shrooms in the 70s. But it's a hilarious read, by the way. The Principia Discordia is free online. It's the most batshit insane thing you'll ever read, and it's really funny. I looked into it when I was 15, and that's kind of how I discovered Iris as a goddess. Um, she is hilarious. Like I said, one time I was getting a tarot reading done at a metaphysical store, and she metaphorically whipped her tits out in the middle of the reading, and the other person could tell, and I've never been more embarrassed in my life. Um, so she will, shit will never be boring. She really likes juice and weed and bacon flavored jelly, which I hate and refuse to open. And apples. I kept an apple on her altar one time for 6 months and it didn't go bad. Um, yeah, and like that also works. She's just a lot of things to honor her are um laughter, dancing, singing, being creative. She's the Discordianism wise, she's considered the goddess of chaos, clowns, artists, and children. Um, the original Hellenistic depiction of Eris actually was the inspiration for Maleficent. Eris was the original bad fairy. If you think about it, because Eris, to those who don't know, her most famous myth in ancient Greece is at the wedding of Thetis and what the fuck's his name? Was she showed up because she hadn't been invited, threw the golden apple for the most beautiful. Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite all try to pick it up. They get a guy to judge. That guy's name is Paris. He gets promised different things by all three goddesses. Aphrodite promises him Helen, who's considered the most beautiful woman in the world. Problem is, she's already married. So Aphrodite essentially kidnaps Helen, gives her to Paris, and that starts the Trojan War. So, if you look at the similarities between what happened with that and Maleficent, you can see that Eris is very much the inspiration for Maleficent. Hilarious shit. Later on during the Odyssey, Eris also shows up because Zeus sends her down to wake up the Greeks because the Trojans are trying to sneak up on them in the middle of the night, and Eris stands in the middle of their camp and just screams at the top of her lungs to wake all of them up. And given that she is Discord, I cannot imagine that sounded great. So, if anybody else had, let me see. Tips for shadow work. I have a shadow work or had a shadow work tarot deck specifically. I do tarot mostly. I am a bit of an that's why we call ourselves an off-brand oracle. The ancient Greeks had Socrates. Y'all have me. Uh, I do a lot of tarot work. That's primarily what I do. I also do well, I'm supposed to do journaling. I have my ADHD. It's a little bit difficult for me to write, but mostly going to therapy. I'm in therapy now, so I guess that more constitutes my shadow work now. But I use tarot specifically. That's my device through which I connect to things outside of myself. Is using tarot. So, oh god, Paris, dude, Paris and Helen. Talk about fucking people that got fucked over by the gods. Yeah, the gods were also in ancient Greece. I need to emphasize to people, not supposed to be good people. They kind of represented the worst in humanity. Athenian Greeks really thought that humans sucked, and so the gods also sucked. What we would know as heroes in ancient Greece didn't necessarily mean good people, like it tends to mean now. Yeah. So to wrap things up, because we are getting to the end of my hour here, tell stories, tell myths, they belong to you now. Remember where you never lose sight of where you've come from, but also don't spend all your time looking back, or you'll never look forward. I think it is about a balance of both. And I implore people to speak and be heard. I'm always happy to answer any questions. Feel free to DM me, contact me on my Dreamlit, whatever. Thank you so much to everybody who has been here, to everyone who listened. This was a wonderful experience. You all were a fantastic audience. I hope you learned a little something, either about yourself or each other. And I implore you to be safe, be kind, and to treat one another with the respect that you would want treated, to yourself. And if you have any further questions, feel free to hit us up. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna go throw up. I woke up literally an hour ago. But thank you to all 27 people who stayed the whole time. Jesus Christ. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. And if you would like, we are also artists. So if you would like to catch us, we have a table in the artist panel and we'll be streaming art tomorrow night. We also have commissions open if that's something you're interested in. They're very cheap, I promise. And thank you all very much, especially any Mythiotherians. If you want to hit us up, I'd love to meet more of you. Yeah, thank you so much. And be well.